What is up, Nico Nation? Welcome back to Division Draftables, our NFL draft series that highlights the outlook of your favorite team and all 32 NFL teams as we transition out of draft towards training camp and ultimately preseason football. We got the AFC South today, episode 7. I am your host, Niko Chambers, Nico the Draft Guy. You can call me. I got Pete on alongside me as my co-host, and we're super excited to get into this today. We're just going to start rolling straight into it. The Indianapolis Colts. Pete Dunn, talk to me about their draft.
Well, it is truly a two-man draft in my eyes. It is the two guys at the top of the draft. We knew probably since about January that Tyler Warren, if he was going to be available at 14, was going to be an Indianapolis Colt. And here we are. A great player, guys, going to be plug and play. I think I've told you before, like I think he walks in the league and he's a top five tight end. I think he's that good. And then they got JT Tuimoloau out of Ohio State, a guy that we had ranked pretty similarly and a guy that they took at about that same range. So, can't knock either of those guys. I think they got two really good players. Other than that, though, there's a lot of I don't even want to say question marks, completely unknowns. A lot of guys that weren't on either of our radars that they took fairly early in a lot of these drafts. And so we'll see the time. Time will tell whether or not this works out or not, but there's definitely a lot on the table for this team.
I think the big thing, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. There's really no, after the first two picks and maybe Riley Leonard, who's a backup quarterback, I, there's just nothing here. There's no juice in this draft. I think the main sticking point, obviously, is they got Tyler Warren at 14. Didn't have to trade up for him. I'm pretty sure they were the ones trying to work the phones, trying to get him, and he fell to them. So unbelievable value for this Colts team, getting him, and I totally agree. He's going to be a weapon for whoever is the quarterback for them this year. But other than that, I think it's just a very there's not much to say. It's a very average draft. We'll kind of look over here to the depth chart and. Not much really to say. They did, though, have a pretty good free agency. They did also lose guys on that offensive line. So, Pete, is there any hope that you can give for this like Colts team this year?
Well, the big thing for me is that the it's similar to the conversation we had earlier um, with the 49ers and that they had a massive need, and even with the Dolphins, when we talk about their secondary, like they had a massive need at offensive line. You lose two starters that went and got paid a bunch of money in free agency, and you do nothing to replace them. You completely stay in-house and which is fine. Like they've got some guys they believe in, two notably who were drafted last year, and then it's just gonna be interesting to see how they replace that. I think that's the biggest thing that I am interested in. Like, how much do they regress? Because they're going to regress, and so how much do they regress? How much does that impact? Like this offensive line was something that was really good probably 5 or 6 years ago and has been on the downside since then. Um, and so other than that though, like you said, like there's not a lot of turnover. It's gonna be an interesting team. It's gonna be really interesting to see who plays quarterback for this team. And so whether or not the Anthony Richardson experiment is over, whether or not he gets moved. And Yeah, it's I don't know. We'll get into it more when we talk about the over under, but it's definitely an interesting team this year.
I think it's a tough one. I think there's some bright spots on this team. I think they have a young core at wide receiver, a bunch of guys who are kind of yak monsters and just deep threats who they just let them fly once Anthony Richardson can get that ball out there for that deep ball that he's so good at. Um, and then obviously the defensive line is really sound with just all the guys that they have there, adding JT into it. It'll be interesting. They kind of fix up the secondary a little bit, which has been a little bit of a weak side for them. But really, it comes down to the quarterback at the end of the day, and we need to see some type of jump from Anthony Richardson this year for us to declare if the experiment is over or not. I don't know what else they can do. Is there anything else that this team can do? Have they done um, to kind of build around Anthony Richardson? Have they done it correctly?
Um, I'm not sure. I think with a guy like that, I never trust that you trot him out early. And that's what they did. They drafted him and they trotted him out early, especially when I believe Flacco was the other guy on the roster that they decided to start Richardson over. And I've been a firm believer that you sit the rookie quarterback, and you let him learn in the offense, and they didn't. They trotted him out there. So, with that being said, I do not believe they handled that well at all. But since then, if you wanted, like, if this offseason, you know, I don't think they handled it as well as they could have. I think that this is a worse offensive line with a better tight end. Like, I don't know. It's gonna be really interesting, and maybe the Daniel Jones competition will help him more than we see, and that gives him lights a spark underneath of him. But I don't know. I don't know how much more he's got as an Indianapolis Colt.
At the end of the day, it's all about the landing spot, especially for a quarterback. You see what it's done for some greats like Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, just being able to sit and watch and see what happens. It just trends everything in the right direction when you can do that. And especially when you're drafting a project quarterback like they did with Richardson under, I think I saw something crazy, under 750 pass attempts in since high school, like some crazy number like that. And you're still trotting him out here with kind of a mediocre kind of nucleus of a team. So I don't know what it'll be this year for them. We'll kind of get into your top five here. Talk to me. Give the Colts some hope, the fans.
Well, you got an amazing player in Tyler Warren. He is really, really good. He's like I said, he's going to walk in. He's going to be an awesome tight end in this league. He's going to be a mainstay in that offense, hopefully on your team for a very long time. DJ Giddens, a guy that I think will play this season. A guy that I had not watched pre-draft, but I've heard some things about post-draft that I think are really good, especially when you've got a room that is open outside of Jonathan Taylor. So, a guy that I would definitely keep my eye on. And then sleeper J2 Maloa, like he's going to be really great opposite Latu, a guy that really high floor player, but also has more room to develop than I think people think. He was a five-star edge coming out of Ohio State, really high recruit, really great athlete. Just has put it together in some sense, but hasn't put everything together yet. So I think a guy that is a really good player for this team.
Is he going to play outside linebacker or defensive end?
I think he'll play defensive end. I don't think he's got the skill set to play outside linebacker. I think he'll stick at defensive end.
Do they maybe move Latu? They already got Kwity Paye there. Uh, can you see something like that happening or?
I don't know. I'm not sure if he's going to come in and start immediately. So I think he'll be a rotational guy at least for the first few games this year. But I think he'll definitely be somebody that cracks the rotation and then slowly takes over from there.
100%. I think honestly he'll be my draft diamond JTT. I just think yeah he's going to be a Colt for a long time. Having him under contract for the next five. I think he'll sign a second contract with this team. Just like you, my favorite pick, best value, and year one impact. It's Tyler Warren. He's just gonna, this team has been lacking the tight end for years. And they finally got it. And it'll be really interesting to see how they utilize him. If he's going to be the bookend tight end at all times. So it'll just be really exciting to see. And then, like you said, DJ Giddens is going to have an opportunity to kind of be maybe that two behind Jonathan Taylor. Super excited to see. We'll kind of go to the storyline here. We talked about kind of the team being built around Anthony Richardson, but can this team suffice maybe sneaking into a wild card? Could they win the division?
No, I don't think so. I mean, not unless there's a massive step up, like you said, from Anthony Richardson this year. I don't think this is a roster that's built for that right now. And truthfully, I don't know how much upside I see in this roster over the next few years either. So it's funny the way they've drafted, they've taken a lot of players like JT and Latu last year, and even guys like Downs that like, yes, they're good players, but the upside isn't crazy high. And so when you do that, you get a lot of decent football players. And right now, I think they have a decent roster that's not going to make that much noise this season.
I have to agree with you there. I don't think they have enough to kind of push in this crazy AFC. We'll switch to a Titans team that is on the upturn, as you will. Really solid draft for them. Talk to me about what you see here.
Yeah, no, it's actually similar to what we talked about with the Browns when there's like, okay, I really like that pick. Okay, I really don't like that pick, but then I really like that pick. And it's like a lot of back and forth, which kind of got me on a B. This grade is very dependent on Cam Ward, a guy who you were a lot higher on than I was. But a guy that I think this is a really great landing spot for him. This is an awesome system with a coach that has developed a quarterback before and a offense that is they this whole free agency was built around getting Cam Ward the best at least the best year one situation they could. They completely overplayed paid for Dan Moore just to have somebody on that offensive line at that left tackle spot. So I'm not sure, going into a guy like Kevin Winston, a guy that I think is going to be really good on that back end. We both like, Gunnar Helm got him another good tight end. They have two good tight ends in that room now. And then they got, one of the steals of the draft with Eli Gallman in the fifth round. So another weapon outside on that boundary to go with Calvin Ridley. It's a good draft. It really is.
I mean, Alec Ayamanor, I mean, we talk about him all the time. Round five, I can't believe he dropped that far. Um, One of our favorites in this draft that you see seven, number six, there. I'm really interested to see kind of how he falls into this kind of wide open Tennessee Titans receiving room. We'll kind of get into that as we look at the depth chart. Another guy, Oluwafemi Oladejo, another dude who can really come in here and make some noise as we do transition here. A lot of different things going on here, kind of free agency frenzy, if you will. Some notable names as you see here in the orange. How do you sort this out, Pete?
Well, it's kind of like what I went into. Like they did a really good job of like plugging holes in the best way they could, just so he would have a decent roster for this first season. And that's why you see so much orange on the screen. It was a lot of bodies to get in that they know can play decent football. And so that's what they did. They got guys like, like we talked about with Dan Moore. Also a Van Jefferson pickup, Tyler Lockett pickup. Those are two more people that will catch the football for Cam Ward.
100%.
And so it's going to be really good to see how he has a really I don't want to say a soft landing spot, but for a quarterback, a rookie quarterback coming off the number one overall pick in the draft, like it's about as good as it gets.
I'm super excited. I think he's going to ball for this team. I also think that kind of the way they set up this roster, giving a lot of the rookies, the draft picks, some opportunities to be real players. I think Kevin Winston Jr. Could have a really good rotational spot. Depends where they put him. If they put him at nickel, if they put him at safety, I think he's going to have a really good opportunity. I think we talked about Oladejo. He'll definitely be in that rotation at outside linebacker. And then, of course, the receivers, as you see him over there. Another guy, the undrafted free agent, Xavier Restrepo, that's Cam Ward's boy. And what I'm hearing in camp is that he is the man. Pete, have you heard anything about that?
I have and I remember hearing the stories about on day three of the draft, Cam Ward calling the GM of the Titans and saying like, "Go get my boy," and they're like, "Trust me, we're gonna get your boy," and they
Yeah,
did. They got him, and now he's in camp. A guy that we were significantly higher on than when he got drafted, even though neither of us. I actually thought I was low on him compared to where other people had him. Um, and then he didn't get drafted at all. So it'll be interesting to see whether he, moves into that rotation or not, whether he has the speed to be able to play at the NFL level. But uh, definitely not shocking at all that once he got undrafted, he was going to be a Tennessee Titan.
it's crazy to see, it's crazy to watch. I'm super excited to see that connection. One notable thing in this receiver room, you see him really far back, Treylon Burks. The remnants of that AJ Brown trade. I don't know how well that's worked out for them. That's kind of unfortunate. We'll kind of go in here to the picks here. Talk to me what you see.
Yeah, this is like, when you look at the draft from this perspective, just on the guys on this list, like it probably is surprising that I only had it as a B. But like I talked about, like there's a couple picks in there that I really didn't like. And then, starting with the elite guy manner, he's a great player. He's a guy that we had a lot higher. I don't know how many times I have to say that to get that through. I cannot believe that he went in the fifth round. Really, really high floor player, super strong hands, great route runner. Going to play at that X position with Calvin Ridley, and he raises your floor of that receiver room a lot, even coming in as a rookie. And then draft Diamond Gunnar Helm, a guy that I think is another, like we've talked about, like there was a theme to this all season, and they got really good football players. And he's a good football player. He's going to come in, he's going to play a role on this team. Sleeper Kevin Winston Jr., a guy that I think is going to come in and I think he's going to play on this Tennessee Titans back end for a really long time. A guy that struggled with injuries at his last few years at Penn State, but a guy coming into the season that people were really, really high on. There was a point where I thought like I was pretty sure he was going to go back to school because I didn't think he was going in the range that he deserved to be going in. Coming into the season, he was a late first, early second type of guy, and they got him at a really good value strictly because of injuries, none of which were too serious and too concerning. So another really great pick, and then goes without saying, year one impact, it's going to be Cam Ward.
100%. Kind of same thing there. Year one impact going to be Cam Ward. Just like you, favorite pick and best value. Alec Ayamanor. We said enough about him for today. Not even enough. Put the word out to everybody. He's going to be a stud in this league. I think, like you said about Kevin Winston Jr., he's going to be the draft diamond for this team. I think he's going to play for a very long time for them. And then I think nobody's really talking about Olu Oladejo. They've kind of needed this pass rush for years now. I'm super excited to kind of see if he can be that guy for them. Talking storylines, the notable thing here, the main question is, can a quarterback be properly developed by this team? We saw they drafted Levis a few years ago. He's still on the roster. How's that going to pan out? I don't know, but just try to sort that out for us.
Yeah, it's really interesting that he's still on that depth chart that we just saw in the last few screens. I don't really know what their plan is with him. I don't know if it's going to be a Zach Wilson kind of fade where he just goes from team to team after this. But he also like it's also one of those guys like he's not a good backup quarterback because there's not really a high floor there.
Yeah,
Not really sure what their plan is, but yes, I do believe that Cam Ward has a completely different trajectory than Will Levis did because simply it's a different coaching staff. This is a
yeah.
coaching staff I believe in a lot more. I trust the Callahans to make do with what they have. And so he's, being the OC when he was there with the Bengals, saying the way that he developed Joe Burrow. A guy that really did need a lot of development. But to be fair, like he knows what a good quarterback looks like, and he knows how to get him in a good system. And I hope that's what they're going to do with Cam Ward too.
That's two number one picks right there. It'll be exciting to watch. We'll transition here to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Pretty average draft for them. You see the main headliner, Travis Hunter. But besides Travis Hunter, is there anything really notable about this draft?
There is, Wyatt Milam's a guy that I like having that body on that offensive line. Kaiser is a guy that I liked. We both had in the same range, and they actually overdrafted for him, which means that they believed in him a lot too. I think he's going to be a really good linebacker in this league for a good amount of time. Another really high floor player, and then they got Tootin in there albeit a semi-crowded running back room, but he brings a different speed to that offense that I don't think they have with anybody else. Really, 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 really great athlete. And so yes, there's pieces here, but this draft, this B minus grade is 90% weighted on the fact that they got a player like Travis Hunter.
And I think it's also 90% weighted on the fact that I'm I'm hoping him to play two positions. If it was just a one position deal, I would probably rate it a C. But I think that they're going to play him at two positions. Is that too far off of a assumption?
I don't think so. I think that's what they drafted him for. And I think he's been clear, they've been clear that he is going to at least give that a shot. And albeit whether it's certain packages on offense, mainly on defense, vice versa, I'm not sure. No one really knows what their plan is with that yet. I guess we'll see when week one comes around. But either way, if you have a player like that on the field, he's a game changer, truly.
I'd have to agree with you there. We'll kind of transition here to the depth chart. Looks like they tried to revamp that O line a little bit. Nothing crazy jumping off the screen in terms of free agency. What should this team really be looking forward to?
Well, I mean, you got Cohen in there now. You finally got a guy that knows. that saved the Baker career. And you're hoping he can do something similar with Trevor Lawrence because you paid him money like he already had his career saved, so it better work out.
Yeah.
So you've got really you have a top 10 receiver in the league with Brian Thomas. He is fantastic, and he's going to be really, really good for a really long time. And so yes, you've got him, you've got a good running back room, and you've got a defense that will hopefully be better than they were last year because they have the pieces to be. So yes, there's definitely positives here. And then if you see a step from Trevor Lawrence, I think there's a lot of optimism around this team.
I think that's ultimately what we need to see. I don't know. I mean, he's had a pretty mediocre career going forward. I think I saw something about him like straight up with Daniel Jones, and it's like
Yeah.
bar for bar the same stats. So I don't know. I think if you're talking about people on a hot seat, Trevor Lawrence is the top three player in the league on a hot seat. Um, he just needs to perform this year. I don't think the roster has been that bad for him to be as mediocre as he's been. I don't think it's been that great, but when you're a good quarterback, you find a way to get it done. So hopefully he can do that. Nothing else really notable. Diami Brown they bring in, Eric Murray at safety. Nothing much else, but talk to me about the picks.
Yeah, Baishal coming in that favorite pick spot, a guy that I think he's going to have a role in this offense. I don't know how long ETN is going to be on this team, truly. It's just been a really regressive last 2 seasons for him. And so it sucks to see, but I don't know how long it is until Bigsby takes over that role. And then when you've got Bigsby as a starting back and you have to choose between, okay, who do I want to play between ETN or who doesn't have a lot of juice or Tootin who has an absurd amount of juice, I think he's going to crack that playing time and find his packages, especially with an offensive mind like Cone. Draft Diamond Kaiser, like I talked about, he's going to be a great player. He raises the floor of that defense a lot. Really smart guy. I think he's a fifth year senior at Notre Dame, and led that linebacking core to the national championship last year. So he's a really smart player. And then Wyatt Milam's coming into the value and sleeper. I think he's going to crack that rotation soon enough on that offensive line. He's going to find a spot, and I think he's going to keep it. A guy who has tackle and guard flexibility, but I think he's going to end up inside. And then year one impact is obviously Travis Hunter. He's going to be fireworks, man, just fireworks.
It's going to be awesome to really see. Um, so good I had to kind of like divvy him up a little bit. I think my favorite pick here is going to be Travis, the receiver. I think what he brings to this could be really interesting. I think ultimately the best player is Travis, the corner. Um, I think he will have the longest career. I think ultimately the receiver phase will eventually fade out as his career goes on. So that'll be interesting to see. Combo that's a year one impact altogether. I think best value Wyatt Millam, like you said. It'll be really cool to see what he does. And then sleeper Kaiser, high on that man. I think he's going to bring some juice to this linebacker core that they have and do some great things. So that'll take us kind of to the storyline here. New coach, new GM in the building, and just really needing a Trevor Lawrence statement year. What can we expect year one of this kind of new regime?
I think it's going to be a completely different offense and really dynamic around this team than what you've seen before. A lot of what you've heard from the Jaguars camp is they talk about the player Travis, I mean the person Travis rather than the player, and I think that says a lot about what Gladstone and Cone are trying to do with this team and what they're trying to build with. So, anytime you have people with that mindset in place when building a team, I trust where that's going, especially with a guy like Gladstone who's had so much success over with the Rams. So, it's gonna be different. They're gonna play faster, they're gonna play stronger. I don't know if Trevor Lawrence can handle that. I sure hope he can. Mentally, I still have the Trevor Lawrence, the prospect in my head, and I'm like, of course he can, of course he can do that. But these last few years have been rough, and so we're gonna get a really good view this season on how much the last few years have been because of his development and failure has been because of coaching staff, or how much is because of him?
He's ultimately got to stay healthy, and kind of got to lean on these coaches to see that kind of trajectory that we are looking for. It'll take us to the last team in this division, the Houston Texans. You see their draft here. I called it the draft of the Jays. They drafted, what is it, four guys with the first three letters of the name J. Very interesting there. But besides that, talk to me about what you see here, direction wise.
I do. I like this draft a lot. I think it's probably closer to a B plus than it is a B. I'd like do I think Jaden Higgins has a lot of a skill set that they already have on that team. But they do need more bodies in that room, and they got two good ones, both Iowa State kids. And then Ursery, they need another tackle. They've got Blake Fisher at right tackle, but they've completely revamped that offensive line. A guy that can come in, a great, like a huge body, very talented. Needs a little bit more development on him, and I think they plugged enough holes to where he can maybe sit this year. But down the road, I think that's going to pay really good dividends for that team. And then Jalen Reed and the Penn State safety that both like that they got in round six, who I think is going to come in and have a role on that back end.
Ultimately, this was a team that traded out of their first round pick. I think was it
It
the
was.
Dart trade? Yeah. So they traded out. We thought that that was a landing spot for your guy, Josh Simmons. But ultimately, they decided to go Ursery here. Um, I think it'll be interesting to kind of see what they do, taking the twin wide receivers out of Iowa State. I think that's kind of cool. That's kind of a cool dynamic, kind of bringing that into the building. But last three picks, nothing really. But high ranked guys, we'll see what they do with that. We kind of walk into this really depth chart with a new kind of offensive line outlook. Obviously, their main need, and then they got a bunch of reserve guys who kind of are really good role players. Talk to me about what you see here.
I think this is a team that was not satisfied with the way last season went, and they're doing a lot to. They did a lot to come back from that. I think point blank, this is one of, if not the best secondary in the league. Um, and when you have also one of, if not the best edge duos in the league, I think
Yeah.
that's a recipe for winning a lot of games. And then you've got a receiving core that you know has a lot of upside now is the best way I'd kind of say it. You know what you have with Nico. He's fantastic. Tank Dell coming off an injury. I don't know how much you're going to be able to rely on that. But with the other guys like Christian Kirk, again, a guy that is going to catch the ball, really high floor player. But Higgins is going to play well. Noel's going to play well. They've got some guys in there that I like. Cam Robinson had a great year last year with the Vikings, even though it was on a one-year stopgap type of thing. And then this is a team that had a lack of an identity last year on the offensive line, and that is moving in a direction to fix that because that was truly what was holding that team back last year. And they went and they got. I think they hit the reset button on that. I'm not sure whether they're going to get better now, but they'll definitely get better over the next few years.
I think it's a weak division. I think that this is probably going to be a repeat division champion right here. I think it's good enough to do that. I feel like we saw a little bit of and if it was because of the offensive line or not, I feel like we saw kind of a down sophomore slump for CJ Stroud. Um, but the defense was on par. And that's kind of the thing you got to lean on here. Another thing, you don't see it here, but Nick Chubb going to come to this team. It'll be really exciting to see that. Um, and yeah, I just think that kind of bringing in the guys like they did with Cam Robinson, Laken Tomlinson, not guys who are going to blow you off the stat sheet, but they're going to fill the holes. You also got Trent Brown in there, and things like that. I think it'll be really interesting. Of course, they traded Tunsil away, so kind of recouping that, it'll be very interesting to see. Do you think Ursery plays this year? Like, what do you see from him?
I don't. I think Cam Robinson's too good at left tackle for him to play this year, and I think that they trust Blake Fisher at right tackle. I don't know whether I don't. I think Ursa is genuinely too big to play right guard. But I think that is the one spot on this offensive line that they don't really love. I think that you feel confident about your other four guys. and I don't see him as a guard. So I don't think he's going to play this year, but I do think I'm not sure. Do you know how many years are on that Cam Robinson deal?
Might be
It's
two.
it's a 1 year contract.
One,
So
okay.
it's literally just get in, and then Arsery will be the tackle next year, and I think they feel really good about that.
I think they should. Talk to me a little bit about the kind of ordering the receivers. Is the way that they have it here on the screen, is that what you think it's going to play out to be?
No, I think Noel's going to be playing in the slot by the end of the year, and I think Higgins will be playing on the right side. I think you hope Mechie can. I think Mechie is more of a slot guy in my opinion as well, and I think Christian Kirk can kind of just play where you need him to. And so you've got with that being like with that dynamic, you have a lot of guys coming out of the slot, which I think is fine because you also have two really big body receivers with Higgins and Collins on the outside.
It'd be very interesting to see there. We'll get into the picks here. Five picks.
Well, our Ursary is going to be my favorite pick. Whether or not he plays this year or not, I think he's going to be really good down the road. Jalen Reed, draft diamond. I think that secondary got better with him in it. And then best value is going to be Noel. He's a guy that I honestly liked a lot in this process, and I think he was definitely undervalued going in the third round. I thought he was closer to an early second round receiver than he was a third round receiver for me. So. And then top sleeper, Woody Marks, a guy coming out of USC who's just a moves like a receiver, truly. So with that, guys we talked about with Damian Pierce and Mixon and Chubb, you don't really have that in that backfield. So a guy that I think is going to be a really good change of pace guy coming out of there.
Gotta agree with you there. Same kind of thing. I think Jalen Noel's going to have that year one impact. I think, like you said, he's going to go to the slot by the end of the year. And I think he's just going to pop off for them. I think my favorite pick is probably Jaden Higgins. Just kind of big body receiver that they're going to be able to kind of move around and kind of just throw the ball to alongside Nico Collins. I think Urza is going to have honestly the best career for this Texans team. He needs to with the way that their offensive line group is kind of set up, if you will. Talk about best value, Jalen Reed, 13th safety taken, who's my number nine on the board. I really think that he is an opportunity to kind of learn from the good guys they have in that room and kind of just be a stud that he is. And then top sleeper, corner Jalen Smith. So other than that, kind of we talked about it a little, but outside the division, how good can this team be?
I think they can be really good. I think this team can make a serious push in the playoffs. I think it's kind of reliant on how good Stroud is, and then whether or not they really plug those holes in the offensive line.
I have to agree. I think this is by far like they're winning the division 100%. I think the only thing that could stop them is maybe just a Jaguars resurgence with Cohen. That's really it, though. There's no threat here. So you can book them for playoffs. Um, they're definitely going to be there. D'Amico Ryans, all the guys, he's got them for sure. That'll take us into the offseason winners and losers. Pete Dunn, is there a true winner of this offseason?
I'd probably say the Titans because I think they got a quarterback that has a legit shot at being their quarterback of the future. And they also got some good pieces around him. But yeah, I think I'd slightly go Titans. Not
I think
not
they I think they won the draft over all everybody. And I also think that kind of their free agency was a little bit better than most teams here in this division. Um, talking about losers, I don't know what I would do. Where would you go for a loser?
I'd probably go Colts just because it was the most underwhelming. There's a serious you could make a serious argument for the three other teams for having the best offseason just because of the Cone hire, the Gladstone hire for the Jaguars, and then we just talked about the Texans, but there really isn't anything super positive about the Colts offseason other than they got a really good tight end. So I mean, I would pretty strongly go Colts for the
I would
loser.
have to agree with you there. I just draft was, I think, the worst out of them all, and got some pieces in free agency, but they usually do. They usually get one or two guys, and then kind of the rest kind of trickles out. Really dependent on Richardson there. You see the win totals on your screen. 9.5 for the Texans, 7.5 for the Jags. 7.5 for the Colts, and 5.5 for the Titans. Pete, on what is on your mind?
I think I'm taking the over for the Texans just because I think that they're going to eat up on some of these other teams in the division. Jaguars, I'm going to go over. I think Trevor Lawrence does have a bounce back season when like we were talking about. I think most of what has happened, I'm going to blame on the coaching staff. I think he's simply too talented to have all of that be his fault. And so Colts, I'm going to go under. I think they take a pretty significant step back this season. Not only take out the quarterback play, I think the roster isn't that great. And there's a lot of question marks on quarterback play. You're choosing between two candidates who are not that good. So I think that I'm pretty heavy on the under there. And then Titans, I'm going to go slightly over. I think they win 6 games this season. I think Cam Ward has enough firepower in them to carry them to that mark.
I agree with you fully across the board. I do expect for this Colts team, I'm expecting a top five pick for them. I think 7.5 is very, very generous. You can look in previous years, they haven't had the best roster, but they found a way to kind of win games, especially within the division, kind of just like whatever they could. I don't think that trend stays the same this year at all. Um, so I'm gonna have them go under there. Main question here, just real quick. We didn't talk about it in the Titans segment. We're talking about it right now. Is it possible for them to make a Texans 2023, Commanders 2024 jump?
Ooh. Um, I would say if you asked me this year versus last year, I would have told you it's more likely the Titans do it this year than the Commanders do it last year. So with that being
Really?
said,
Okay.
definitely a chance. That's mostly based off the fact that I think Cam Ward was a better prospect coming out of Miami than Jaden Daniels was coming out of LSU. And I was wrong about Jaden Daniels, and we'll see what happens on Cam Ward. But yes, there is definitely a chance that they could do something like that. I don't think it's very likely.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there. It'll be interesting though. That's why you got to stay tuned. So that'll be it, guys. Thank you so much for watching AFC South. Got one more episode. That's it. So thank you so much.